This conversation originally premiered at CFF on March 25th, 2025, and was co-presented by our community partner, Future of Film Showcase. The film industry may be unpredictable, but Canadian creators, they're finding new ways to make it work and make it last. From building brands to staying bankable, today's guests are the future of film in Canada who share what it takes behind brand hustle and thrive. Cheers Amira De Vera, Aisha Evelina, Christina Ayana, Shant Joshi, Yuri Randaha, and moderator Eric Bazari. Welcome to the fest.
Hi, everyone. We're talking today about directing, specifically transitioning to directing, and kind of coming from sometimes another role in the production space. And what does that mean, and what are you bringing with you as you transition into a directing opportunity? So I think there's sometimes two kind of categories somebody might fall into, just to kind of kick us off, when it comes to having another role in production or in film in general, and then going to directing. One is, I think it's sort of, I always wanted to direct. I went to school maybe, or I studied in some way, or I just had an interest in directing, but maybe I'm not booking gigs right away, or I need to make a living in some way, so I'm going to do something else while I direct. And then another route, I think, is... Oh, okay. Is that better? Yeah. All right. Thank you. And then I think the other route is maybe I'm passionate about something else. I love being on set, and I see other people directing, and I think maybe I could do that as well, or something... some kind of passion stirs up inside of me and kind of guides me there. So what I'd like to do is maybe go through everyone and kind of they'll introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their background and, where they're coming from in terms of another role in film and how that's led them to directing. And we'll start maybe with Meelad.
Thank you very much. And thank you to Canadian Film Fest for organizing this panel. How do we transition to directing was the question?
Yeah, and kind of where you're coming from too. So,
okay, so I guess, if I were to kind of rewind, I went to film school with Shawn. In fact, we were classmates same year. And then when I came out of film school, the first industry-related jobs that I had were in the editing department as an editor. And that kind of was a natural evolution, given the fact that, when you're in high school or in university and you're making films, you often find yourself having to edit those films because you don't really have an editor, because you can't afford an editor. And so you kind of improve your editing skills. And I felt that also was not only a discipline that I enjoyed doing, but it also just reinforced my knowledge of filmmaking, because ultimately cinema is editing. There's this very famous quote, I forget, I'm just going to paraphrase it, but it says that the evolution of film language is essentially the evolution of editing, because editing is that needle that kind of threads all the other disciplines in film, whether it be drama or writing or production design and so on and so forth. It brings them all together. And if you were to extract the editing component from all of it, they would fall separate from one another. So editing is essentially cinema. And so I thought that the more that I edited, the better I understood visual storytelling and the cinematic language. And so throughout most of my 20s, the jobs that I got were in the editing world. But of course, for me, directing was always the main pursuit and the main interest. And I think gradually, with every passing year, I was able to kind of make more and more and more of a transition into directing and kind of move myself away from editing in the more traditional sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I was also in like that first camp that Shawn described about. I also just wanted to write and direct movies always. That was my goal. And I was making short films and I was writing features and trying to get them off the ground, but it just wasn't happening. So I kind of stumbled into casting, and that became my bread and butter for a while. And it was great to, I kind of created a world where I would tell these casting directors, just call me in when you're busy. I don't need to work full time. So, and I think as an independent filmmaker trying to get your first movies made, I think time is the most valuable thing you can have, because I just need a lot of daydream time. You need a lot of time to kind of get the ball rolling on these projects. So working in a very freelancey way in casting was really beneficial to me. It gave me a lot of time to kind of develop my own work. So eventually I just got my first feature made, which is screening tonight, and we're posting my second feature. So I'm transitioning into just doing that more and more. But along the way, I've been working freelance in casting, and I've learned a lot and loved it. I'm sure we'll talk more about how it's kind of helped me in the directing side of things as well. But for me, it was really just about finding something in the industry where I could still learn and still kind of be involved, but also that would give me the time to actually develop my own projects and not just take over my whole life. So that's what casting became for me. And I felt very lucky every time I got that next casting gig. And so, yeah, we'll talk more, but that was my story.
Hi, I'm Joanna Tsanis. I'm right on. Hello. Hi, I'm Joanna Tsanis, writer-director of The Kilgren, my feature debut, which is tomorrow night. Thank you. Before venturing into directing shorts and then eventually this first feature, I was a producer and production manager for a number of independent short films. And if anyone has ever produced an independent short film, you know that you're not really the producer, you're like the producer / location manager / craft services / security guard, whatever. You're everything. And it's quite the undertaking, but it's also teaches you a lot about creative problem solving, which can be very helpful when venturing into directing. And I just wanted to share a little anecdote, because I know there's lots of filmmakers in the room. Eventually, as I was producing, I really wanted to write, so I wrote a short film and I produced it, and I ended up connecting with a couple other producers who were my producing partners. And this short film started really small, and then it got bigger. It got a bigger budget. It got a director attached who had years and years of experience in the industry. It got a really famous actress in the lead role. But it did nothing tangible for my career at all. Then, ironically enough, the next film I did, which I wrote and directed, a micro-budget horror movie that I shot at my parents' house with a non-union cast and a camera that has since been discontinued, actually ended up getting into a lot of decent genre festivals, and it led to me building a network that kind of in a wayward way led to where I am now and led to me greenlighting a feature film. So the reason I like to share this anecdote is because it kind of proves that the scope and the budget of a project isn't necessarily commensurate with the opportunities it can lead to. So, yeah.
Hello, I'm Dan. I'm a filmmaker. My film screens on Saturday. But yeah, I started off, and I still am, an actor and a writer and a photographer. So, been acting a long time, just missed Shawn on Jane, which was sad. I run a photo studio, and through Second City, I started off writing, sketches, which then became more ambitious short films, and then kind of finding my voice and doing a series of shorts. Totally agree with Joanna. Such a crapshoot on what's the one that's gonna pop off and lead to something is impossible to, I think, figure out in advance. But yeah, so now building into, I have a pair of features in development that we're hoping to shoot in the next 2 years. Yeah.
Amazing. So I've got some follow-up questions and stuff too, and we'll kind of guide the discussion around, and hopefully have some time for a Q&A in a bit. Nick, I was interested in your casting background. So for those who don't know, I work as a film and TV director, but for a really long time, my background was as a post-production supervisor. So I went to film school, I wanted to direct, I made shorts constantly, and then my own feature, and had to pay the rent and have a day job. And so that career progressed incrementally as well. I would post-coordinate a smaller show, and then that would build to a slightly bigger show. I'm wondering for you, I noticed on your IMDb, you've making shorts for a really long time as well. You have a lot of success in casting. Did you find that as you continue to build your career as a director, that sometimes people have like kind of a sticky idea of you. They're kind of like when people come up to me, a lot of the time they want to ask me post questions. They go, "Hey, Shawn, I got a technical question for you." They're not like, "Hey, I'm working on this scene and how do I block this out?" I'm wondering if you could kind of speak to that experience of people kind of seeing you as someone who works in casting.
Yeah, that's a great question because it's definitely true. And it's something that I was warned about a long time ago, that in this industry, people can pigeonhole you if they see you doing something over and over. And I think it's really true. I've actually also been guilty of that. Like I remember when I was first making shorts, there's someone who worked in our art department. And every time I went to make a new short, I would call him and be like, "Hey, do you want to be in the art department again?" He's like, "I'm like an editor. I just did that once as a favor." But I would always forget and keep calling him. So I can't really blame people for doing that. But definitely happened with me where when I'd been making short films, and when I first started working for a local casting director here in Toronto, an agent, I remember when I first reached out with this new job, he was like, "Oh, aren't you a filmmaker?" And then years ago when I was casting The Legacy of Cloudy Falls, the movie that's screening here, I could tell all the local agents were like, "Oh, you think you can make movies now?" Like it was very much that, because they'd gotten used to seeing me in a different role. And I don't know how much of this is just me projecting my emotional baggage onto the local agents of Toronto, but it did feel like on the first movie, they were very skeptical. On the second feature that weren't posted now, they were way more forthcoming in terms of getting actors to tape for it. On the first one, now, I think a lot of that was just because that was my first feature. So I think no matter what, when you're making your first feature, people are a little wary. Like, are you going to ever get to camera? Is this movie ever going to see the light of day? But I also think because they knew me in terms of being originally like a casting assistant and then later a casting associate and casting director, I think some of them didn't take me as seriously for that reason. So I definitely think you get pigeonholed, but yes. And then, yeah, you just have to kind of work to break out of that, I think. So it does happen for sure.
Does anyone else have kind of experience with that too? I mean, I know, Dan, you work a lot as an actor. Do people sometimes have that feeling of, here's an actor who wants to direct or something, as Nick was saying with casting?
I didn't experience that so much, but I think where I realized recently I had to shift my mindset is, as an actor, I don't know if you guys find this. Are there actors here, by the way? Okay, great. There's a lot out of your control, right? We can go to acting classes. We're waiting for the phone to ring for an agent to tell us that there's a place and time and we got to be there. And I kind of wish that when I was younger, as an actor, I had created more of my own work and realized that so much of what we do is networking and kind of building together. And then as a director, I always had this idea when I was just focused on acting that you got to do it one way. You got to go to film school, you got to graduate film school, and then you get in here, and it's one thing to the next. And what I've come to realize is there's so many ways into directing, from being like a post super or a script supervisor to being an AD to anything, just being on set and getting those reps in and meeting those people. So that was kind of, something I figured out pretty recently.
That's interesting. Joanna, I wonder too, because I know you said a lot of your background was you have a background as a producer and working on indie films and short films and things like that. A lot of those, just to kind of contrast with what Dan said, a lot of those things you really need to really push the boulder up the hill, right? There's no waiting for a callback or waiting for your agent to kind of say, "Hey, do you want to make this short?" Right? What's the I wonder what your experience is like with that, just kind of that effort of needing to really like push a project forward, and how that's kind of helped you as a director.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes you produce the film you're directing just out of necessity, especially in the indie world. Mm-hmm. And I will say something that can be a challenge, but I think it's really important to be mindful of if you do have a producing background, you go into directing, is to take off that producer hat when you're directing and have like a good producing partner that can put on that hat, not just while you're shooting, but also in prep. For example, if you're interviewing key department heads, I mean, there's a very big difference between examining through the lens of a producer versus examining through the lens of a director, and you want to have those two perspectives in that interview. So I think I think that would be the challenge with moving from producing to directing. But when it comes to the positive aspects, like you said, moving the boulder up the hill, it is like that. It is very much like that when you're an indie producer. You do develop a lot of creative problem-solving skills and know how to kind of adapt on the fly because anything can come up. So I think that makes you, it's almost like, I don't know if anyone's ever been in the service industry or like waitress, but it's kind of like after waitressing, when you see a waitress who's like kind of slow, you're like, I get it. you're not mad about it. So sometimes I do have kind of an understanding, one thing that maybe other directors who don't have that background would, and I think it makes you more adaptable, which you have to be in indie filmmaking.
Absolutely. And Meelad, you have kind of an interesting career element too, in that you're also a professor. I'm curious what that's like trying to balance that career with also developing and maintaining your practice as a director, and maybe how you were telling us about how you were working a lot as an editor. What has kind of inspired you to kind of focus on directing and teaching?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the second component of that question first. It was not necessarily planned that I became, so I'm an assistant professor at Wilfrid Laurier's Department of English and Film, and I just transferred over there as of this academic year. Before then, I was teaching as a permanent professor at Humber College. And in fact, while I was at Humber, the first year that I got offered the professorship at Humber was when I was going to just walking right into pre-production on my feature, His Father, Son, the one that's playing at the festival on Thursday. And so it was one hell of a busy year, but I knew I couldn't say no to the funding that I had just received, and I couldn't say no to that opportunity that had come my way. And instead, I just had to kind of focus on the positives that it could offer. So I became a film professor, again, not that I ever kind of planned it, but I think I was always very fascinated by kind of the intellectual component of filmmaking, or any subject matter that's of interest to me for that matter. And so, I went back to study a master's because I just kind of wanted to expand my own cinematic horizons. And as cheesy as this may sound, it's true, at least I think it is that I've always thought of myself, and I think I always will ever think of myself as kind of a student, right? Not just in life, but in terms of film, because for me, the knowledge, it never ends, right? And in fact, every single endeavor, every single project is just an opportunity to learn more, because you get through to the end of the production, whether it's a short film or a feature film or whatever, and then you look back and you go, holy fuck, I knew nothing, right? And then you just keep going up and up and up in terms of the expansion of your knowledge. And so I think that mentality kind of fosters, I guess, a kind of an academic outlook. And I think it just kind of came with the fact that maybe I enjoyed talking about film, and I think I was not too bad at explaining it. In fact, I have one of my former students from Humber here, so she can tell you if I was. And I think it goes back to something a history teacher of mine told me in middle school. He said, if you can explain it to someone, right, then you'll understand it way better, right? And if you can take any knowledge to the point that you're fully able to teach it to somebody else, then you've nailed that knowledge. And so I think it's the interplay between, because in the academic world, your practice, right? There needs to be a practice component, and for me, that practice component is to make films, right? And so the good thing is in the world of academia, they are supposed to, and they do, of course, open up a certain component of every year for you to focus on your work. And that interplay between me working and then me bringing that knowledge back into the classroom and then teaching it to people and then actually experimenting with the students and then taking those experimentations back on to my own projects, whether it be on set or screenwriting and so on and so forth, is not only creatively gratifying, but I think it actually kind of strengthens my own filmmaking. So far it's been going well. It is an insane amount of work, though. And it's an insane amount of responsibility because you're responsible for literally hundreds of human beings that you're teaching, and to faculty and department and so on and so forth. And then you have other stuff to do outside of you have to be an advisor for other programs as well. And then you have to work. But it's just the question of trying to be at least very disciplined and carving out your day and sticking to that regimen. Yeah.
I want to take a second too to introduce Rebecca as well, and then to maybe ask you a bit of a question. Meelad mentioned being a student and kind of like approaching life as a student, always looking to learn. And I think one thing that's really interesting, because both Rebecca and Dan have a background as actors and in some quite successful, high-profile productions, I think you have a unique opportunity where you see directors all the time directing in a way that a lot of other people don't. I'm wondering if, maybe first of all, you can kind of tell us a little bit about you and your background, but also if there's anything you have, if you have any thoughts on that idea of like, has it helped you seeing other directors work on set? Has it been a thing where you're like, maybe I won't do that, or maybe I'll take that and bring that into my craft?
Yeah, I mean, as a director, it's interesting because you really see how you don't really see how other directors work. And as an actor, you do get a bit of that. And every director is so different. So it gives you some permission to be completely yourself. I think that's one thing about directing that's so cool, is that there are certain rules you have to stick to in terms of filmmaking, but really there are a lot of rules that don't exist that you can totally break. And at the beginning, I'm like, can someone please tell me the rules? I don't know what I'm doing. But then over time, it's like, oh, I have my own way of doing things, and people like that, and it's cool, and it's okay. So I think I've discovered that through directing, and then you see that on the others. I think they feed into both as someone who still acts as well. So I think also as an actor, it really helps with casting. I think we see sides in scripts probably way more than a lot of directors do as well. And I think that's really helped. Just seeing, for better or for worse, so many scripts come our way through auditions and stuff like that. I didn't even realize I was studying scripts as much as I was just because I had to as an actor. I don't know if you feel the same way, but yeah.
Yeah, Dan?
Oh, you want me to jump? Sure.
Yeah, sure. Maybe you have anything to add.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny. Like, as an actor, you get picked up at 6:30 in the morning. You get to your trailer. You are so upset for having to wait for hours and hours and hours and feel like there's all the time in the world and why aren't they getting to me? As a director, there is no time. You have to constantly fight and have a plan B and a plan C. So it's really neat now with the love of directing being what it is, as an actor, to be on set and kind of have this different understanding of how it works. But also, yeah, to your original question, I remember being, on set, whether it's on a TV show or a commercial, and being directed by the director like I'm a piece of equipment, right? With no sense of no, I'm a human being with, bad imposter syndrome right now, tell me what, anything. But then I've also been on sets where, the director is basically acting out how he or she wants you to perform. And I realize for me, there's probably a happy medium somewhere in there. Right. Yeah.
Meelad said something interesting, which was about having the time available to make films. So, seeing the benefit in that job as a professor to, I'm going to have some time, whether it's sabbatical, whatever it is, that there's going to be time for me to practice my craft. And Nick, you mentioned something too, which was, you mentioned that being a big draw to casting is that you were going to have time to kind of practice your craft. I'm wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, because I know for me, when I got into post, that was part of the draw was, in post-production, you're still working on a TV show or film, and so it is still a busy job, but your job is going to be for 6 months, 7 months, a year. You know that you're probably not going to work on weekends unless it's something urgent comes up. You're going to have somewhat of a normal-ish day, And for me, it was really important to be able to carve out that time to write and to maybe shoot something on the weekend. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about just kind of that.
Yeah, that's definitely such an important part. And it's funny because, like, usually with casting, if, let's say, when I started, I got hired by a local casting director, usually they would hire you to work full time, and that's just how it is. But I cannot handle that kind of routine. I'm sure, like, a lot of people here, it's like I'm not a routine person. So I quit that job after 6 months. And it was at a wrap party that I saw that casting director was like, you know, if you ever want to hire me again, you can, just on like a freelance basis. And then that became something that I just said to everybody. And then I started getting my own independent contracts from that. So it was more that I just decided to do it in a freelance way, which isn't necessarily a lifestyle everyone would love because you are, you know, having to watch your spending sometimes. But for me, it was like the trade-off was worth it because I could take months off at a time between casting contracts to try to get a movie made, make a short film, that kind of thing. And it just gave me that flexibility. So, yeah, that was something that I kind of like created that sort of situation for myself. It's not pretty typical with that. So I think no matter what you're doing outside of directing, the important thing is, can you find that time? Because it's not just about honing your craft and writing. It's also about, like, I produced my 2 features as well, and it's about getting that match lit to get the movie made in the first place. You need time to just brainstorm ideas, pitch ideas. If, like, all your daytime hours are absorbed, you don't really have the mental capacity to just sit down and daydream and focus. So, yeah, I think it's really important to just, whatever your side job is, that it allows that time to really focus on your work. And you just have to do it. There's no excuses. And it's like, otherwise you see people who just, you know, years and years and years go by and they're not making new work. And so you just got to find a way to make that happen. Yeah.
One thing too, I think with everyone having a different background is it can, you know, we talked about, do people see you a certain way? Do they say, oh, Shawn's just a post supervisor, Nick's casting, and is there a barrier you have to fight through? But it can also, conversely, be a superpower. You know, you come in with really solid expertise in one area, and some directors maybe have a more general area of expertise. Joanna, I know you have a background in producing. I'm wondering how that, like, charged your directing, how that kind of gave you that superpower, and especially in lower budget filmmaking, I'm sure that that's an area where you really need that.
Yeah, it's strange. I never wanted to direct. I only wanted to write and produce. And then when I wrote this short film, Imagine a World, which I had this micro budget for, and I was looking for a director, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said, I can't find anyone to direct this short film. It's such a weird short film, and it's got such a small budget, and it's very weird to invite someone to come to your parents' house to shoot something. and then she said, well, why don't you just direct it? And she wasn't in the industry, so just having that kind of outsider naivete of being like, well, why don't you do it? And I'm like, well, I don't have any experience. She said, just do it. Who cares? And then I thought, okay. and then that's what sort of led me into deciding to direct the short. It was really out of just necessity and also just this why not. And I think sometimes we really create barriers for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to just go for it. Everyone has to start somewhere. And in terms of producing leading to that, I mean, every short film I've directed except for one I've produced myself, not because I wanted to, but because that's how you make it happen. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's, I guess, like I said before, creative problem solving is something that's really helpful, and being very adaptive on set. But I find I just really want to stress the challenge of separating that producer brain, that logistical brain, from your director and creative brain, and really throwing yourself into your creative space, and having a producing partner can really help with that. So, yeah.
Do you think, just to follow up quickly, do you think that you always wanted to direct, but maybe there was something kind of saying, like, there was some kind of inhibition? I know you said that your friend just said, hey, just go for it. Was there when they said that to you, was there like a little voice that just kind of maybe needed to hear that, or what do you think?
Yeah, when I was 12 years old, I actually had one of those camcorders with the VHS that you put right in, and I would direct little movies when I was 12, and my brother would dress up like Ghostface from Scream, and he would like chase after my friends, and I would record them. So somewhere deep in my subconscious, I guess I wanted to direct, but yeah, for some reason, I guess because I didn't have an educational background in film, I just was a movie buff and loved film, and I liked to write in my spare time. I didn't think it was something that I could venture into, but I'm really glad I did, because I absolutely love it. So.
It's amazing. And Meelad, how, as a teacher, as a lifelong learner, how do you feel that gives you, that superpower when you're on set? Like, do you think, does it mean that like you're coming in a little bit fresher in the sense that like you weren't a key grip for 6 months before? You know what I mean? Like, are you coming in fresher? Are you coming in with a new perspective? Do your students help inform that a bit? Like, I'm curious how you feel that charges up your films, I guess. Or if it does.
Yeah, it's a good question. I never drink coffee except when I'm on set. So that means whenever I do have coffee, I'm awake for 1,000 years. So maybe I think that's one thing that gives me energy. I almost need a second to think about it. It's a very good question. I think, again, I'll rewind. I think it is important, and others have touched on this, of course, that especially as a director, you can't just be a director because it doesn't even make sense. There's no such thing as just a director. A director is someone who knows all the roles, right? Now, maybe they don't know cinematography as well as the cinematographer, but they should perhaps know it better than 99% of the other people on set, right? Maybe not from a technical standpoint, but from a conceptual standpoint, they absolutely need to know it. Because you don't only direct actors, you direct crew. And so the only way you can kind of direct someone is to really understand what it is that they go through, right? You have to be able to empathize with them. And you have to kind of see everything and see the situation from their vantage point. And then only that way can you truly communicate to them. And can you kind of bring them on board, right? And have them follow you on the journey. And of course, you have to be open to what they have to say because it's not ultimately just about your decision. I think a good director is the person who surrounds themselves with the most qualified, the most intelligent people that they can get access to. And a good director is actually the person who knows how to choose the right decision or to choose the right idea, right? Irrespective of who comes up with that idea. Because if you only want to go with your own idea, then you're probably not going to make a very good movie. You have a team, everybody has an idea. You should figure out who has the best idea and incorporate that into it. So I think a lot of it just comes from that. I like people. I like being around people, even if they're unfriendly people. Everyone's a character in some way, right? And so, for instance, the casting process and for His Father's Son, it took us a total of 15 months to cast, and I did the casting myself because after a certain point, because it's about an Iranian Canadian family, it just didn't make sense for a casting director because I knew they would probably just give me cliches of what they think an Iranian is, right? But so much of film development and pre-production is you just negotiating relationships with people and forging relationships with people and surrounding yourself with the best that you can find. And I think so much of that energy that you talk about comes from just that, surrounding yourself with the right people who can kind of be in the trenches with you, because film production is basically like going, I haven't been to war, so I know this is an overstatement, but it's a big battle, right? And I think you need those people to kind of feed off of, yeah, and give something back to them as well, yeah.
Rebecca, as an actor, I feel like the acting director superpower, to me it seems like you go on set, the actors go, oh, Rebecca knows what we're going through. And they breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief. I feel like a lot of directors are kind of afraid of actors or don't know how to work with them or don't want to learn or maybe more interested in the technical side of things. I'm wondering, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm wondering how that informs the craft on set for you. Like, I imagine that's a superpower for you is.
Oh, yeah. It's huge. No, and it's how I pitch myself and how my producers pitch me when they pitch me. They're like, Rebecca's an actor too. Did you know? and I have my own way of doing it. Every actor is different. I'm different. And I really have, I'm continuing to develop how I work with actors as an actor. I basically think what I'm doing is treating actors how I would like to be treated on set, and probably in a way I never have. It's like my fantasy of how I would like to be treated on set, and even before on set, because I'm a ball of nerves. As an actor, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what I'm doing there, you know? And like, there's so much that actors don't know, and it can be a very confusing and very scary thing to be on set. And at the same time, I know as the director that an actor that is scared does not look good on camera. So we don't want that to happen. So what I do, out of empathy, but out of my own self-interest and for the film as well, is from the very beginning, from casting to once someone is cast, I make sure, if I can talk to them beforehand or send them an email, let them know everything that I think I would want to know if I was going on to set, try to find out how they work. And sometimes I'm working with really new actors too, and I remember I understand that they're not, they're gonna know so little. But like even people who've been to theater school know so little about what it's like to be on set. So I just let them know that that's okay, that they don't have to know everything, that I have their back, that it's okay to make mistakes. The great thing about film is that you can make a mistake and we can do another take. That I just try my best to really take the pressure off, because it can feel like such a high pressure situation. And at the same time, I know a lot of directors are scared of actors, and they're scared to give actors notes. But as an actor, I know, at least for me, that I love getting notes. And so people on set are often I think, amazed at how much notes I give actors. And I push actors a lot too, because I'm an actor. And sometimes I have to back off a bit. But I know I feed off of notes. I feed off of feedback. And so I'm right there. I'm rarely sitting in a director's chair. That's the other thing. I'm usually sitting, unless I have to be because there's a big setup and I can't be close to the actor or whatever. I sit on an Apple box as close as I can to the camera, right next to the actor, so that I'm basically in conversation with them the entire time. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty big, like a big deal, and the performance is so key to how I work with actors on set. And of course, everything else is so important too, but everything is like the cinematography, the set design, like I prioritize all those things as well, but it has to work with the actor. And what was surprising for me was people in the crew coming up to me telling me that they liked my approach that didn't have to do with acting. Like my set designer came up to me once and was like, "Hey Rebecca, I really like your approach." I'm like, "What's my approach?" And he was like, "Oh, you're performance centered." I'm like, the set designer is complimenting me on the fact that I work well with actors. But I think the reason for that, and a sound person came up to me as well, right when I was starting out. And so I took away from that it's, what's nice about that is it's much more entertaining for the entire crew to watch actors work and an actor work with a director that way. And to see people really collaborate closely that way. And everyone just gets, I think, sucked into that process and gets buy-in. So, yeah, that's definitely a big deal for me. It's definitely how I sell myself. I do think, I have other things going for me as well. But yeah, working with actors is a big one. And it's really made me appreciate the art of acting as well, now that I'm a director. I think I used to sort of be like, I'm just an actor, blah, blah, blah. But now I realize how important and valuable actors are, and every actor should know that as well. So, yeah.
I love that idea of telling them ahead of time, too. I think sometimes we, as people who are on set, sometimes just assume everyone knows everything on set. And I have been on set where, maybe you have an actor who's younger, or they're not as, and things go a little bit away from how they had thought it was going to go, right? Maybe they had planned or they rehearsed it a certain way, and then you can kind of see like a nervousness kick in, or like, oh no, I'm sorry, or what, that kind of thing. And I think the idea too of just, hey, you know what, checking in first, oh, have you been on set a lot of times? Oh, you haven't? Okay, well, it's okay. I don't know everything. It just seems like such a valuable conversation to have up front. Dan, I'm wondering for you as well, as someone coming from a background as an actor, are there things that you think you do on set that kind of charge your performance as a director?
First I want to say I agree with everything Rebecca said. That was all spot on. Yeah, I mean, for me, I think maybe the only thing that I didn't hear is as an actor, sometimes approaching set, getting on set, you have this, fear of the director, of the hierarchy of the thing. So I try to, but I don't know if this is like a director thing, but just be like a nice human thing, which people seem to enjoy. Introduce yourself, make yourself available to the actors, doesn't matter where they are in the call sheet, because it's in the service of everybody. Like, my favorite thing about making films, it's such a team sport, and by looking at me, you'd know pretty quickly I didn't really play team sports. So this is awesome, right? Like, we're all pulling together, and we want to be nice to each other to get the thing and make it work.
Awesome. Joanna, I know you mentioned kind of one of the inhibitions you had was just not having like a formal film background or education in that sense. I'm curious how you sort of figured out what you needed to do. Like, how did you figure out how to prep, how to get ready? Like, or maybe your process is just entirely your own.
I took a couple of workshops, like a couple of $40 workshops to learn the basics. I watched some YouTube videos, and that was kind of my process for learning all the things about filmmaking. I did take a course, which was very helpful, and I learned, but even with the course, you learn the most on set. That's how you learn the most, and from other people. You'd be surprised how many people want to mentor you, and I just want to point out that you don't need a big budget to make a strong film. I mean, I used the anecdote before about how I did produce a short film that had a large budget and didn't do much for my career, and then this micro budget short film that I shot at my parents' house did. And also, you don't necessarily need your shorts to get into huge festivals in order to build a network. I actually find at a lot of larger festivals, they would separate the short filmmakers from the feature filmmakers, and it was actually more difficult sometimes to network. Whereas with medium-sized and small festivals, they put everyone in the same space. So if you're looking to make that jump, I mean, me personally, my feature was greenlit because I was in a medium-sized festival and I was able to connect with investors that way. And also, I know in the Canadian industry, when it comes to getting money and making a movie made, the automatic thing people think about is things like grants and contests. And I think we are very lucky in Canada that we have access to these kind of opportunities, but you can't depend on them. In the end, it is a small committee of people deciding who gets what, and not everyone can get a grant or win a contest. I certainly haven't. So you need to think outside the box, and while, yes, simultaneously you can apply for those grants and those contests, you also have to kind of pave your own path. There's many different ways to do this. You can build a social network and go into crowdfunding for your film. Like I said, it doesn't need to be a lofty goal. You can make a great short film with a small budget. Another way to do it is to think in terms of a niche community and how you can get investment through that way. Are you involved in a community locally or sport locally that you want to make a movie about? You'd be surprised. There might be some people involved in that community who want to invest in your film, whether it's a little bit through crowdfunding or whether it's a lot. I actually know an indie horror filmmaker who was a hairstylist who always wanted to make a horror movie, and so she finally decided to take the plunge. Again, she was like me, no formal film education background, and she got her clients at her salon to fund this short film because it was a horror film about a hairstylist, and that short film blew up, and that short film greenlighted her first feature. So there are many different ways to get to your goals, and I think it's important to adapt and to don't be afraid to take multiple routes at the same time.
Thank you. And Nick, I realized I didn't ask you about the superpower question, and I think it's really worthwhile because you've worked in casting on some really big productions as well. I imagine that helps when you're making your features.
Yeah, definitely. I would say I learned a lot from casting that could definitely apply to my features just by watching great directors work and watching different directors at different experience levels, and just in terms of how they communicate, what to say, what not to say. I think with a lot of first-time directors, they tend to be a little more wishy-washy and less concrete, whereas more experienced directors are a little bit more, they know exactly what they want. But I've also seen cases where really established, powerhouse showrunners, for example, might be quite rude in their delivery, and then I see how that kind of triggers the casting director and the casting department. And I've always kind of considered myself a fly on the wall. So yeah, I mean, it should go without saying, but yeah, obviously, like, people, react differently to different kinds of communication from directors. So that's been fun to watch. Also, just like learning, being in the room with actors pre-pandemic, before everything became self-tapes, I would spend entire days just like talking to actors in the room and doing scenes. And it was kind of like a great way to just learn about communicating with actors. So yeah, those, but yeah, a lot of benefits. And also just like reading the script before it gets made and then comparing it to the final film. Like, it's really fun to watch the whole process and just learn. And it's sometimes very surprising. Sometimes the movie turns out so differently than what's on the page. So yeah, I think there's a lot. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'm forgetting that really applies. But yeah, those are the big. And also, I cast my own movies now. Like, that saves money. And it also, I've learned the tricks of, like, I just made the second movie we made, which we're in post, and now we shot in a very small town in BC with a population of like 900. And I cast a bunch of locals in certain parts. And that's something that I've had a lot of experience with in the casting world on bigger features where you cast not like non-professional actors in small roles. And it kind of, I've learned about like where to cast people like that, like what kind of roles to cast people like that in, as opposed to professional actors, and how to go about it. So definitely learned a lot of skills that have applied to directing for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't even think about the fact that you would get to see other directors and showrunners direct people, especially for callbacks and things like that, right? Like, you're bringing them in, they're going to give the cast directions. Some of those directions are not good in those sessions, and some are really good, and some I'm sure you're like, oh wow, that's like this person really has thought about what they're looking for in this performance. When I worked in post-production, I worked on a show called Odd Squad, and I was a post supervisor. Odd Squad. And one thing that was really interesting about that experience for me was we had our post on set, so we got to meet all the directors that came through, including Warren Sonoda, who's here. And you would see how they behave, right? Like, you'd see, okay, this person thinks they're a big shot, or this person's really nice. This person treats people well, this person doesn't. I also got to see their edits. So I would see, oh, this person really didn't know how to cover this scene, or this person covered it way too much. So you really get to dissect the work they were doing. And there's so many roles on set where you do get to dissect what other people are doing and learn from them if that's what you want to do. Yeah, I want to open it up to some questions. Yes.
2 questions.
I wish I could do that more, but it's kind of impossible to hide. So yeah, unfortunately, they just pigeonhole away. So I couldn't really go full Batman. But if you can find a way to do that, you should, because people will pigeonhole you. But and then it's the other what was your first question answer?
What is your practice as a director?
Outside, like to hone to, well, I would say working in casting, because I still do that sometimes, like working with with actors on specific scenes and just redirecting them, that really helps a lot. But beyond that, probably just watching a lot of movies and trying to learn from other filmmakers. Maybe that, I don't know. I really thought that's a great question.
That is a good question. So I've been taking a lot of the Sundance collab classes. Those are great. I've also been doing kind of ongoing writer workshops, and I have a couple of writing groups going on. I write and direct a lot of my own stuff. That's kind of, I want to direct other people's stuff as well, but I find writing also really informs the directing and understanding story. And then with the watching movies, I recently learned, and this is fun, the library has like the entire catalog of Criterion movies, like every single one of them, and they all have incredible extra features. There's lists online of like Criterion movies that have, you know, extra features that are about like breaking down a scene and seeing how like the cinematographer approached this sequence or whatever. And it's a great educational tool. Also on YouTube, there's loads of that. So I try to really immerse myself in that at least a couple of times a week. Yeah.
Sean?
Just something you could talk about maybe like networking, like perhaps keeping track of people you went to school with 15 years later.
Networking. Well, Joanna, you were saying about I think you had an interesting point about like building a network through festivals, which is a great way. We're all here. We're sitting next to people. Hopefully, everyone leaves this room with a new friend or a new person they know. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think with networking, I think a good thing to understand is that building a relationship requires giving and taking, not just taking. So if you're meeting people and you're immediately pitching a project to them, immediately like, look how great I am, give me, please, then you're not really going to build an organic relationship. You'd be surprised how much you would get out of building a relationship with someone over a period of time. You may meet someone and then connect with them over email. You might even send your short to them. They'll never watch it. It'll be on a to-do list for 7 years. But then they'll know you and you'll connect on social media. And a lot of times these producers, these investors, these EPs, these executives, they're artists too, and you can support them through social media. You can like their posts. You can share their trailers. You can just congratulate them. Like, you know how good it feels for you, so it's going to feel good for them too. And even if this doesn't translate into anything like a work opportunity, you might have a friend, you might have a mentor, you have someone who's in your network. And I think that you'd be surprised building those kind of relationships, how it can lead to an opportunity in the future. I mean, that's actually how I led to getting The Kilgren greenlit. So.
Yeah, I think that you really touched on something too, which is like about putting out there, like it's kind of like putting your networking out there in terms of being supportive. Like, occasionally I'll have something good happen in my career and people will reach out, right? They might go, oh, I saw that you made a film and it's at this festival, congratulations. And that feels really nice. Sometimes people will kind of reach out in terms of like, it's very specifically, how can I help them? It's like, hey, I saw you made this film, don't know anything about it. I want to make a film, you tell me how to do it. And that feels like less supportive, right? That's, and like that does come up a lot. And I think I don't know that is like beneficial networking, right? Versus like, I saw something you did, great to meet you, I'm working on this thing, it's very similar, I'd love to keep in touch or whatever.
I wanted to just add, just like the other perspective is as someone who hates social media. Like I don't like posting. I don't like looking at people's posts. I don't like it. What I found really, really, really helped me, and this started when I was at Austin a couple of years ago, is if you meet like a writer-director and you've studied writing a little bit, offer to give them notes. Like offer to, read their whatever and give whatever feedback they're looking for and be of service. And then, we're always looking for people to read our scripts who know what's up. You don't want to use up your small community. You're on your 3rd, 5th, 7th draft. You need new people. And so then, you do this for them, and down the line, you give them something to read, and that kind of builds a relationship organically, and, that's nice.
And apply for things, and there's labs, there's workshops, there's even things that you don't need to like apply to, but if there's a workshop you can go to and you meet 1 or 2 people at that workshop, that's adding another 1 or 2 people to your network. Or I've been in a few of these labs, and then that's 4 or 5 people that I keep in touch with, and a few sometimes they're working on a short or they're working on a feature, and then that feature gets made, and you let them know it was great. Or yeah. Any other questions? I saw Warren Sinod. Oh, 5, okay. Hands back up. Yep, yes, sir, right here.
I think social media is very bad for my brain. So I'm similar to Dan, but I do feel like the industry keeps me on it. I mean, that's sort of like my excuse, and then I stay there on for hours, just doom scrolling. But it's the hook. The industry is the hook for me, unfortunately. So I do, when something's going on, I do post that. Basically, my Instagram page is just for work, and I have definitely networked and DM'd people and made connections that way. So that's why it's really hard for me to get off, for sure, especially Instagram. So I've met some really great people and people I've worked with, or just even communicated with people where I can't get in touch with them any other way through Instagram. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge, but also a good thing and not so good thing.
Yeah, and just to add to that, because I'm not it's not completely black and white with that, but I have my phone on like a timer of like 10 minutes a day where it allows me to be on like YouTube and Instagram and stuff, because otherwise it just makes me go crazy.
Me too.
But at a film festival, yeah, that's the easiest way to get someone's contact is add me to Instagram, boom, done. You DM a little bit, then you take them to WhatsApp where you can talk like people. When there's, my screening coming up, like I want to let people know, I don't want to text everybody. Sure, I'll post a couple of stories about it, I'll post a post, but then once that's done, then I step back. I don't know how much it does, honestly, if it's worth the emotional upheaval.
I want to do one last question. I did see a hand at the back a couple times, so I just wanted to, yes. Yeah, so the question was about somebody who's new, how do they get financing, especially limited financing, and the problem solving that comes with that?
Sure. So oftentimes with a micro budget short, people finance it themselves. They finance it through friends and family. They get a couple grand together and they get their iPhone and they make it happen. I'm not saying that that's ideal, but you'd be surprised how far you can go with, especially after building a network where you could pull in favors, get a free location here, free camera here, I scratch your back, you scratch mine, that kind of thing. As far as and there's also, of course, grants, and you can apply to those, but you just can't necessarily depend on it. And there's also a limited amount of financing you can get that way as well. And like I said before, there are certain tactics you can use, such as crowdsourcing, such as niche community. You want to make a pickleball zombie movie. You're really into pickleball. Go to your pickleball court, talk to people, and you'll get an investor. This is such a weird example that awesome. It popped into my head.
I'm in.
But that's, in terms of investing, that's kind of a short, but you could talk to me after if you want to know the real answer. I'm just kidding. If you want to know a little more. But as for creative problem solving, you got to be open-minded if you're a writer-director to change the script if you need to. If you have a script that takes place at a bar, for example, but it's very expensive to rent a bar, but you have access because you got a cousin who owns a bowling alley. Can this film be in a bowling alley instead of a bar? What needs to change? Can you still keep that artistic integrity while also changing changing the location or changing the logistics to fit with the resources that you have? And I've seen this before where I'll see a feature film with a small budget where some scenes look like it could have been a big studio movie, and then some scenes you really see the budget. And not necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes if it's not exactly what the director wanted for their vision, it can be, right? So you just gotta go back to the script and ask yourself, can I tell this same story in this scene without all these bells and whistles? Like one of my favorite movies, Branded to Kill, Seijun Suzuki, Japanese movie. There is a scene that was later copied in Ghost Dog where a hitman kills a man by going underneath a sink and putting a gun inside the pipe and shooting him. And there's no, it's just sound. It's just the guy going like this and sound, and it's a very affordable scene to create. But then I've seen other movies where it's a hitman chasing multiple shots, stunts, and because they didn't have the money they needed or the time they needed to execute it, it's kind of a weak scene, right? So you got two scenes, they tell the same story, but one is aware of its limitations and one isn't. So you got to just be open-minded when you're developing.
Speaking of limitations, we are at the limitation of our time. I want to thank this incredible panel. They were great.
Thank you, Eric, Amira, Aisha, Christina, Shant, and Yuvi for hitting us with those reminders to stay creative, stay curious, and keep that hustle hustling. Big thanks to Feature Film Showcase for helping us put this panel together. This conversation was produced by Jen Pogue, Ashley Rains, and Bern Euler for Canadian Film Fest. Music by Brett Higgins. This episode of Cheers and Chats podcast is co-produced, edited, and sound mixed by Avery Hughes. For more info on the fun happening now at CFF, find us at canfilmfest.ca.